It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Colorado head skiing coach, Coach Andy LeRoy. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching and college skiing?
I think I was more interested in just coaching to begin with than the fact that it took me 10 years to graduate from the University of Colorado with my undergraduate degree. I spent a lot of time around colleges and saw what benefit they can provide athletes. And quite frankly, I fell in love with the sport here. So coming back to coach this level was a huge interest. And I was fortunate to find some pretty good jobs at the University of Denver before now coaching for my alma mater here at CU.
What was that like, obviously, getting to compete on the skiing side for Colorado boulders?
At the time, it was 22 years ago at the time. I had already competed on the U.S. ski team for 6 years, competed in the Olympics, and the college level was a little bit lower than I had been skiing on at the time. So it was more just taking a breath of fresh air, cashing in a little bit on the 1 year of eligibility remaining. So it wasn't quite fair being 24 years old and competing against some people straight out of high school, but it was an ego trip for sure. It was a lot of fun and had a lot of success, but more than anything, met a lot of wonderful people that have really helped shape my life since.
Of course, as you talked about that, what was that like, obviously, competing for the Olympics before you even went to college?
That was one of the events that, looking back on my career, it's something that I got an opportunity to share with my entire family and all of the people that had supported me getting to that level. I think just your regular race, your everyday race, whether it's a World Cup or a college race, you're in there and you're trying to compete, but you're not necessarily knowledgeable about everybody that's ever helped you get to this point is watching that event. And in my case, a lot of those family members were able to go over there and be with me at Nagano, Japan. So it was an opportunity to share that experience with so many people that helped me get there, different from just the regular race where I'm just trying to win. This one was about everybody else as much as myself.
Of course, as you said, what was it like competing in your 2 seasons left of eligibility?
I only had one season. I competed when I was 24 years of age in 2000 here for the Colorado Buffaloes, and it was awesome. I won half of the races, NCAA champion. At the end of it all, I was named CU Athlete of the Year. So, like I say at the beginning, it was an ego trip and a little bit unfair to be at that level of that age competing against some people straight out of high school, but I had a lot of fun, and I think it did pave the way for me falling in love with the sport and coming back and trying to do what I have been here in college since as a coach.
Of course, what was that feeling like getting to put on that Boulder's skiing jersey?
But humbling when you start out, you're walking through the walls and you see that the University of Colorado is, in many respects, the foundation of skiing in this country, from Bob Beatty to Bill Marolt and Buddy Warner, Billy Kidd. I mean, some of the icons of our sport were kind of the people that came through these walls at the very beginning, and they're up on our plaques and such. So it was humbling for sure. You're walking around thinking, "Wow, that guy created the World Cup. Awesome. He's just one of the other names next to the other guys on the walls and in the posters." So humbling is a good word.
Of course, coming to Colorado, what was it like knowing that you were already an Olympian competing on the college level?
Uh, I guess I don't. What are you asking there? What was it like competing at college? It was a little bit easier at the World Cup and the Olympics, to be honest.
Of course, what was your Olympic experience like going to Japan?
That was a lot of fun. If I knew that was going to be the only Olympics and the only Olympic race I would have competed in, I would like to say I would have done it differently. But I only made it halfway down the first run. I hooked a tip and I did not hike. I did not go make the gate or complete the race, but the experience of everything around the Olympics was wonderful. I think the first night we flew in, I went to the dinner. Went to dinner there in just the regular, what do you call it? Not mess hall, but the athlete village. And I'm just sitting down at one of the tables with some food, and there's the NHL team over there. There's Messier and a few of the, Patrick Waugh and these icons of the sport that you're like, that guy, oh, the NHL guy, yeah, he's in a few seats across there. So seeing some of those people, I think was like an Olympic experience at the end to have your picture taken with Michelle Kwan at the closing ceremonies. Everybody was going and putting their camera up and taking selfies with her, and of course I did too. But I think all the events surrounding it just make it such an inclusive, wonderful place to display your athletics. A lot more so than just skiing; it's all the other sports.
Of course, during your professional career, what was it like getting to travel the world and going to countries such as New Zealand and even Europe?
That part is probably one of the biggest benefits of our sport, and the fact that our sport, it exists in the United States and in Canada, but it flourishes over in Europe. So I think by the time I graduated high school, I'd probably gone to Europe 50 times, something like that. Or no, not graduate high school, but by the time I'd finished my career and competing for CU here in 2000, I'd probably been to Europe over 50 times. So it was country after country after country, maybe not stopping and looking around and smelling roses, but just that travel, that flavor, that diversity was something that was a lot of fun. Looking back, I think I went to Slovenia, gosh, only a few months after it had been broken up and become not its own country. But I think the walls had been torn down, in 1990? And I was traveling Europe kind of around that time. So kind of seeing those countries evolve from having borders to just driving from one to the next, and the euro is accepted everywhere versus having to change your Slovenian tolars into Swiss francs, into German Deutschmarks and Italian lira week after week. It was rewarding. It's been fun for sure. I look forward to going back and smelling the roses at some point.
Of course, after your professional career, what was it like getting started in college coaching, first starting out as a volunteer assistant?
It was natural, the coaching aspect, being on the ski hill and helping an athlete go faster, but for sure I was unprepared for how much paperwork, compliance, rules, because they don't really exist at any other level of our sport. In high school and the junior levels, you can coach an athlete many hours a day, week, month, year. There's no restrictions. And the same thing at the professional level on the national teams, there's no restrictions. It's only at the college level that we're counting the number of hours per day and days per week and days off and travel days versus contacts and dead periods and so on and so forth. So I don't think I was aware of all the rules that existed in the college. But as I've come to know them and relish them, you can see why they are such an important part of what we do here in college. And at the end, they really do shape the athlete experience in a positive way. So ski coaching, that was the easy part. Paperwork, more of it every year. Getting better at it though, so it doesn't take as much time.
How is it like getting to go to the University of Denver to become their head skiing coach?
My first job in college, University of Denver. I don't know how I got that job. I'll be honest with you. There had to be some strong people in my corner at the time, but I followed an icon of the sport, Kurt Smits, who had won 4 titles in the prior 7 years before I got there. And I think my first 4 years at Denver, second place, first. So I really did believe all I needed to do was keep the van on the road to win titles. But I think I was really fortunate to get that job, and the people that came before me, like Kurt Smits and the Neistat brothers on the Nordic as the Nordic coaches, they had an incredible program, and the foundation was already there. So I really just had to show up and learn what they had been doing and try to make my own mark. So I don't know how I got that job, but thankfully the program was in such great shape it made me look good in the first few years of having that job.
Of course, while at Denver, what was it like building that championship culture?
That championship culture was in a lot of ways there before, but I think continuing it for so long was something that I really started to take some pride in and start to realize that pretty much I think every athlete on that team from 2000 all the way through when I left in 2020, um, if you spent 4 years skiing for the University of Denver, you had at least one championship ring. So that continuity of people that knew how to win a title, it was just there. And that mentality continued to permeate itself. And I think recruiting athletes that had a shared vision, a shared passion of what they were going to do when they got there really shaped the culture. So it didn't matter if somebody took the day off for training because of health or rest or sickness or some other race in the Olympics, they were just supported. So I think that that level of support and that level of commitment to what they were doing really took care of that ambition, took care of the fact that we didn't really have to question why somebody was there on a given day or why they weren't. They came there for some specific reasons and they were going after it. So competing like a champion was that was step one. We didn't have to talk about that too much.
Of course, in the sport of skiing, what is it like obviously helping your team lead to that championship?
Say that question again, will you, Brandon?
Of course, in the sport of skiing, what was it like at Denver helping the team lead to the championship?
I think just trying to identify the athletes, the recruits year after year who are going to outwork the rest of the world. If they did that at our school, I like the fact that they were probably not going to get beat by too many people and that we would show up year after year with an opportunity to win. And I think that's, as a coach, really what you're looking for is to have that opportunity to put your team in that position. And if the chips fall together and they compete the way that you prepared them to, then you should win. But I think giving them all the preparation necessary to be in that position year after year was the important part. That was fulfilling.
How is it like obviously getting to come back home in 2021 to become the head coach for your alma mater?
Dream come true. I think if I could shorten that sentence, give you one word, just the dream come true. I think I never really thought of this job as being available. The individual that I replaced that retired, he was here for 31 years. He was my coach when I skied here. He was has become an incredible mentor, but more than anything, an incredible friend. And I think over the last 10 years, I've probably thought of his retirement as something that would be bad for the sport. I've dreaded the idea of him ever leaving this job, but it came along at the right time. And for him, he hasn't gone anywhere. He's inducted in our CU Athletic Hall of Fame, and he still shows up to half of our trainings to help our team. So I'm thankful to still have him here all the time. And personally, yeah, the fact that I get to work with him is equally as important as the job that I'm trying to do for the athletes that he's no longer paid to coach.
Of course, what has that been like obviously following after your coach's legacy and continuing the legacy at Colorado?
I'd say it's been something I didn't put a whole lot of thought into how it would go. I just thought it would be incredible. I thought it'd be wonderful. But it's been a lot more than that. Aside from just being one of my best friends in the sport, he's somebody that's so generous with his time, and probably even more so than you would think now that he's in here tuning his skis more than the athletes. He's still showing up on the hill, asking us for the schedule day after day. So he's got so much knowledge and so much willingness to help. It's made the transition of me taking over easy and rewarding, but also something that I feel like I always have somebody that I can call if I need.
Of course, how have you used your Olympic experience and your professional experience to help you into where you are now as a head coach?
I think using those experiences, not sure how I'd say that one, honestly. I think as a skier, the fact that I skied at a somewhat high level, that has helped me with confidence to be able to coach others. I'm okay making mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes as an athlete to get to that point. So when I coach, I'm okay saying something that may not work. That the athlete's got to know that, by the way, I'm not perfect. I'm going to say things that aren't going to help. And I would rather say that and it turn out poorly than just having not said anything. Because if I say it and it turns out poorly, well, then we can both learn. I'm not going to say that to you again. I'll say something different. So knowing that you're not perfect and that you're going to make mistakes along the way as an athlete, I think opens the door to operate the same as a coach. And that gives you the freedom to be right, be wrong. But if you continue to try and you continue to learn, you're going to end up being right more often than not. So I think that maybe the failures of being an athlete have led to my successes of being a coach and understanding it's not going to be perfect every time. It's not going to be right. And that's not as important as just the effort you'll put in.
On the college level, what is the biggest difference between alpine skiing and Nordic skiing?
On the what level? Sorry, say that
On the
again.
on the college level, what is the biggest difference between alpine skiing and Nordic skiing?
On the college level, they're identical in the way they are scored. So the points available for Alpine and Nordic are identical. The number of people you can take to the championship in Alpine and Nordic are identical, men and women. All the rules apply pretty much uniform. I think the only difference is the fact that the skis, the equipment, are totally different. Alpine in college, we compete in the slalom discipline and the giant slalom discipline. And on Nordic, you compete in the freestyle and classic disciplines. So I think it is a little odd, Brandon, that they are put together. You know, it's something like the fact that they both happen on snow with skis. Totally different skis, totally different poles, totally different equipment, and totally different techniques, but they both happen on snow. So similar to like figure skating and hockey. They both happen on ice. Let's give away an ice championship like we give away a skiing championship. But no, the sports are almost polar opposites in how they are run and competed, but we score them the same. We call it a skiing championship with men and women. It's awesome.
Of course, what does a typical game day look like on the skiing side at Colorado?
Typical game day. For Nordic races, there's one race, and that race, if it's, let's say, a freestyle race and 10 kilometers, a mass start, every athlete leaves the starting gate at the exact same time, and they race 10 kilometers. First one across wins. On Alpine, slalom and a giant slalom race, those have 2 runs. Combined time of both runs ends up being your winner. So totally opposite the way that they happen. Maybe a 9 o'clock first run for men. Everybody goes. All right, take the times. Those determine the order for the second run. Everybody goes a second time. Combined time wins. Each run is about 1 minute long. So there's a total time of the winner of 2 minutes for that Alpine race. That Nordic 10 kilometer, that took about a half an hour. So opposite the way that they happen. Then Alpine can usually take most of the day because we use the lifts and there's inspections and it can last as much as 8 hours out there working. Nordic, like I said, 30 minutes, hit it and quit it. So the days are a little bit different for each, but I think that uniqueness adds to the flavor of our sport.
Of course, as you said, for Alpine, it being an all-day event, how have you trained your athletes to compare to that all-day event?
Every aspect of their life, Brandon. I think there's the psychological health and performance side of that, of being able to turn on the engine and get it to that point where you can have that optimal performance. And then you got to turn it off. You've got to wind things down. You've got to take care of your nutrition, your rest, your nerves, if those things involve with the day, depending upon how you've done first run and your expectations for second run. But I think that management of your body through a given day, in every aspect, mentally, physically, socially, those all play into the end performance. And I think the very best find a way to do that. When there are so many variables in our sport, the lift breaks down. Okay, so we all stand here for an hour and wait for the lift to turn back on. Well, it's 1 more hour you couldn't have planned for, but by the way, second run starts an hour later. Winner still takes the winner. So I think that kind of stuff, being flexible and being able to adapt through the given day, it's necessary, and best do it more often.
Who are some of the teams that you face each week in your conference?
The West Conference competes against the University of Denver, University of Alaska Anchorage, Alaska Fairbanks, University of Utah, Montana State University, Westminster College out in Utah, and Colorado Mountain College from Steamboat. and did I say the University of Denver? Maybe you said that one first. Those are the schools currently that we have in the Western Conference. I believe University of Reno, Nevada, who we had maybe 10 years ago, is returning. So that's an exciting one to return. And unfortunately, we lost a school like University of New Mexico that had been competing on the circuit for 50, 60 years. We lost them only a year or two ago. So hopefully more programs will come back. More schools will start adopting the sport in the years ahead. But those 7, 8 schools, we all get together to compete throughout the year, all as one. So every school will show up to every one of our invitationals. And then we all go back home. We all come back together, race them. So it's never just a head-to-head competition. It's all of us at once.
Of course, what has that been like, obviously racing all at once versus saying, well, you'll go to Denver and race them and then go to a different team the next week?
Sport kind of requires it. When we take a trail and we shut down that trail for the entire day at these massive resorts of Vail and Loveland and Eldora and so on and so forth, shutting down the entire trail and all the volunteers and people that are required to put on a race. We only have 8 men on the roster for Alpine. If we competed against only University of Denver, they've got 7 men on the roster. A total race of 15 people would not be very exciting. So when you added 6 or 7 men from all of these other 7, 8 schools, now you end up with a field that is competitive. So it's a good thing to have all of these schools here at once. That's also pretty expensive from some of these hills to shut things down and give us an entire trail for a day. So the more people we can put on it and still have quality surface to race on, the better. So,
Of course, what is it like, obviously, getting to compete in those non-conference games, like going to Harvard?
those the non-conference races for college, they entail different levels of our sports. Like I had a woman that skied on our team this past year as a freshman. She raced in the Olympics in the weeks leading up to our NCAA championship. And the same thing, there were athletes that raced at a level slightly lower than our college circuit. So in most other sports, the football player, he can only compete against the other college football teams. Our sport allows you to compete against prospects and professionals almost at all times. So if I used an example of Colorado here, our quarterback in the sport of skiing could compete all season for the Denver Broncos and then come back to the Colorado Buffaloes for only the conference championship, qualify for the NCAA championships, race the NCAA championships, win it, and then go back to the Denver Broncos and compete through the playoffs. That scenario exists in skiing, whereas it clearly doesn't exist in these other sports. So the interchangeable level of prospect level versus professional level versus the college level, it's kind of the flavor of our sport, a necessary flavor, but because we are so small, we are such a niche sport. So
How's that been like, obviously, coaching those athletes that you said could make that jump to the professional level and then come back to the college level?
they're the best of the best. They're athletes that have, number one, taken care of their academics. They've prepared themselves to be able to do the academic rigor of a university from the road, and in some cases, almost completely by themselves, not being in front of a teacher every day that just kind of spoon feeds and hands you that lecture. So they've been some of the best academic students that I've had, and then you add on the work that they have put in with their craft, with their skiing, to surpass so many people in the world. It's impressive. Those type of people are inspiring, and I think there's a lot more out there that aren't even recognized because maybe they don't end up attaining those results, but the effort is put in. Yeah, it's a pretty fulfilling thing to see a group of those athletes ski so well, take care of themselves so well, exceed as strongly as they have, and then at the end of it, support everybody else around them to do the same thing. That's my most fulfilling thing that you end up seeing out of a group like that.
What does the prospective student athlete, when on the road, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
For the most part, I'm looking for fundamentals. I think an athlete, if you apply it to some other sports, there are some fundamentals you see of somebody shooting a basketball, or in track and field, somebody in the form of the way they run. A lot of those same things carry over to our sport in skiing. You got to know the athlete's just going to get bigger, stronger by being in college. They're growing more during these years than anything. But how they treat people, their social skills, their families that they're coming from, you start to see that personal side of them. But if their technical fundamental base is strong at the very beginning, I think that's something that as a coach, you know, you can't wait to have an athlete like that, because you're chomping at the bit to say, here's the weight room, here's the fueling station, here's a team that's going to support you. Now, sky's the limit. How far is this kid going to take it? So without that technical fundamental base, you're kind of missing the boat. You're trying to build a house on a pretty weak foundation. So I'm usually looking for the fundamental base.
What does the official visit look like for those prospective student athletes looking to come to Colorado for skiing?
I haven't done very many of those. So actually, I haven't done any of those here in Colorado. But I think a normal official visit would be, the athlete comes to town and looks around campus for 48 hours and checks with our academics, sees about things that they would study, really gets a feel for the campus and the surrounding area, if it's a place they feel they would be successful in the years ahead. So it doesn't happen very often in our sport, because we are so small and we have a ranking list that kind of shows where people are ranked in the world. But hopefully it will in the future. Hopefully it's a part of how we attract athletes to this school in the years ahead.
What are some of your future plans for the sport of Colorado skiing?
Help this sport become a revenue generating sport. We don't sell tickets, right? We're not football. There's lining up in the stands in basketball. But there are some things of our sport that we can market. There are partnerships out there of which we are desirable too. So I'm looking forward to pushing on some of those things, and with the idea of adding on the racing aspect, sprint for Nordic and the parallel for Alpine. Both of those disciplines are extremely exciting to watch. They could be something that is on TV, that's webcasted, that would draw an audience and we could sell sponsorship for. So I'm hopeful I can help push the sport into the future, and we can become, I don't know if we're going to be the $1 billion NCAA basketball tournament, but one can dream, right? Got to start somewhere.
What advice would you give those prospective student athletes looking to come to Colorado or even come to skiing?
The advice I would give them, academically, make this easy. When you come to school, be one of the best students in the class to begin with, not just one of the best athletes, one of the best students. It needs to take you 5 minutes on an assignment. It can't take the whole rest of the class 5 minutes and take you 2 hours. You're going to end up missing too much training. So academically, crush it. Be prepared to make this school easy and to walk through it with your eyes closed. Athletically, don't just follow what the coaches you've had before have said when they said lift this many weights and run this far. That's the first step. Do double, do triple, outwork the rest of the country, and then we can have a conversation as to why you are or are not the very best out there. If you're shooting for those kind of stars, don't kid yourself. Go get it. See where somebody else may be and imagine how much harder they work. Bury them. Work harder.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are competing on the skiing level, looking to represent Team USA or even Canada on the Olympic level?
What advice would I give them? Probably just tell them to work hard. I mean, you have to put as much as you possibly can into it. Our sport is, and I think athletics in general are not it's not fair. The amount of time and effort and work and heart, blood, sweat, tears you put into sport doesn't mean you deserve anything in return. Unfortunately, it's about the effort and the progress and really the passion you put into it over those years, but you still don't deserve anything back. So to try and have those type of goals out there, focus more on the process, focus more on the effort that you put forth and make that the fulfilling part. If it's just about the end result of making the Olympics, whether you do or you don't is not going to be fulfilling. You want to look back at all the time that you spent getting to that point, and those will be the pieces that you remember. Those will be the stories in the heart that you share with other people. Just holding the medal up on the wall or a participation plaque, that's not going to lead your life. Do something better with it.
What advice would you give those college coaches that are looking to get started in the sport of skiing and even represent their alma mater like you have?
Advice I'd give the other coaches. Learn as much as you can. I think there's a lot of opportunities to become a better coach from our national governing body and the knowledge and courses that they've offered, coaches education. But I think probably the best advice that I ever got, and it's not necessarily for college coaches, but for everybody. I saw somebody at a Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and they made an impression on me with what they said in their acceptance speech, and it was, nobody will care how much you know until they first know how much you care about them. I was like, wow, that makes sense. I tried to do some coaching. Doesn't matter what it is I say to that athlete, unless that athlete first and foremost knows how much I care about them. And then the things that I say to them to maybe help them will resonate and will be effective. But to simply say coaching items to somebody without them first knowing that you care about them is futile. It will not work. It will not lead to the outcome you're looking for. So start about showing them that you care.
What advice would you give those future head coaches that are looking to get started and even coach at their alma mater like how you are?
I think I just answered that one.
What advice would you give the head coaches looking to get started?
The head coaches to try and coach at their alma mater. Much of the same advice I just gave them. Be in touch with their alumni, show back up at their alumni events. If you already competed for that program, then be an active participant in that program, just like you're going to shoot to get all of the alumni in your program involved once you take over as head coach of that program. Be involved in it to begin with. Like CU, I was attending the CU skee ball and donating back to the program, even though I was the head coach of the enemy across the street at Denver. But I think my involvement at this school and continued knowledge of what they're doing definitely have helped when I took over this program to not learn it all from day one, but to have seen most of it over the last number of years. And I'm fortunate it was only 40 miles down the road. So
that's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media along with the Colorado skiing program at?
Oh gosh, can I tell you, Brad? I'm not on social media, but Google me. LeRoy, Andy LeRoy, skiing, CU head coach. I believe I'm on Facebook. I believe I'm on Instagram. We definitely have CU ski team page. Yeah, I use Google a lot, Brandon. Unfortunately, I don't spend as much time doing posts and those things. I've got a whole media department that hammers that, and I should have those answers for you, but I'll be pretty easy to find. I'm the only Andy LeRoy in the sport of skiing, and I believe probably the only one here at the University of Colorado. So search around, you can get me.
Thank you again, Coach Andy LeRoy, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at the University of Colorado as the head skiing coach.
Thank you, Brandon. Have a good day. Appreciate your time.
Thank
Go
you.
Brandon Sports Talk.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Andy LeRoy, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Gosh, that's totally unfair. How you just listed all of your social media right there.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.